Say what? Say what radio show. With no agenda. It's always a surprise. But if we're not having fun, we're doing something wrong. Saturdays, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 5 Pacific. On Haggy Shack Radio at HaggyShack.com. Say what? Hi everyone. You're listening to Say What? On Haggy Shack Radio, simulcast to Wolf Spirit Radio. And I am Colleen Kelly. And my co-host is Nancy L. Hopkins. And on Say What? We'll be discussing topics of the day, things of interest to Nancy and I, and also things of interest to our listeners who may have asked us some questions. And we'll also be discussing what we just heard on Dilly-Dallying in Dolly World. And now, on with the show.
We'll be coming home. Yeah, when the foghorn blows, I want to hear it.
Alrighty, and we are live with Say What? Or Say What? I think we're all still here.
I'm here. I don't know what I was doing, but it seemed to take me longer than normal. Hi, everybody, this is Say What? I'm Nancy Hopkins. Colleen Kelly's here with us. She's our producer and co-host. Dolly apparently has stayed with us. Deb is with us, and Lee Brown is still seemingly online. We just had a very nice, well, I don't know if it was nice. I think it was productive. It wasn't exactly the most fun show we've had. So we got the work done, girls. Let's have some fun. What shall we do? What shall we do?
Well, Dolly wants to share a story, she said.
Okay, good.
I was just talking to my dad, I think it was last night. It might have been the night before, but anyway. He said to me, well, you're so sick, I don't know how you can do your shows. I said, well, Tuesday, Colleen did a replay, and Saturday, my friend Nancy is taking over. He said, well, it's a cult. I started laughing at him. I said, Dad, it can't be a cult. In a cult, people are ruled by one ruler. Isn't that right? He said, well, yeah, and they're all told to do bad things. I said, Dad, there is not one person there who is the ruler of any of the rest of us. And no one would allow anyone to be a ruler of them. Therefore, it can't be a cult. Well, what do you talk about? So I laid it out and told him. I think I about gave the guy a freaking heart attack because
You actually told him, your honest to God view of reality?
Yes.
Wow, congratulations. What was his response?
At first he said, because I said, well, we talk about UFOs. And he had that sigh in his voice. Oh yeah, I knew that would happen. And then I said, and we also talk about angels and God and Satan and demons. And oh, I knew that'd be in there. See, it's a cult. I said, and we also talk about people's everyday life. And we talk about Nancy when she was doing her remote viewing. And we talk about how she doesn't want to do that anymore. She's trying to shut herself down. And we talk about people's military experience sometimes. And we talk about people's childhoods. And we talk about trying to get beyond bad things that have happened in our lives, or people trying to program us into their belief And what we basically do, Dad, we live outside that frickin' box. And he shut right up.
I never would have said, well, actually, the weird thing is that when I wrote, the John Kennedy book, I wrote that long before I wrote 9/11 in the 80s, and I had just a printout of it, and my father read it. Now, he never said anything to me about it at all, but he told my mother that he was impressed. She told me. Then when I went and wrote Cosmic Reality, and it was 9/11 Crusade actually first, my brother was trying to give my dad a copy of the book, and he's going, it's self-published. My brother's going, but Dad, it's a real book. Whether it's self-published or not, it's a real book. It looks like a real book. She just published it herself, you know?
Uh-huh.
So then, Mark just went over and left the book in the kitchen. And when I went up there some months later, he says to me, I read your book. And I said, you did? Because the last I heard, he wasn't going to read it,
Uh-huh.
And I said, okay. And he says, I have one question for you. Okay. How the hell do you know all that? And he must have asked me that question. He would be driving someplace and he'd say over his shoulder, how the hell do you know all that? Now we never talked about the book. That's all he kept yelling at me. He's, how the hell do you know all that? So I guess I did have the conversation with him, but his response was, how the hell do you know all that? So.
Well, I did not mention that I hear dead people.
That was the line, huh?
Oh, that would have put him over the top right then. But he did say, well, that sounds interesting that you can talk about all the different subjects. I said, well, yeah, we're very open. We live outside that damn box, Dad. We're overcoming programming. That's what I was trying to get through to him.
And what did you think?
My dad's my dad. He's still gonna believe that somebody's trying to influence me. And I think he believes that way because he's been trying to influence me all his life, my life. So, I feel better that I had that discussion with him because it let him know I'm not living in my opinion, I'm not living in a cult, with a cult, around a cult, buying into a cult. I'm not doing any of that. But I am stepping away and out of the box that he likes to try to keep me in.
Well, it's an interesting situation when you're dealing with your parents because they always treat you like children. They don't treat you like adults.
Right.
I don't care how old you get to be, it's always that relationship. And I never felt comfortable talking about anything about this stuff because you never knew what was going to piss them off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you avoid the conversation.
The confrontation.
And the confrontation, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I came through eventually with my parents because I've had the same thing happen, and I used to try to explain my view or say even when I wasn't asked, and it would upset them because they felt it was challenging their reality and their view, and they would get really upset. And there's that thing of the placebo effect. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do that anymore. I've got to accept where they are at in their reality and just not push mine at all. And I don't. But you know what? When something weird happens, who do they all come to ask? And, you know, when they need support or love or if they're having a challenge, they'll all come to me. So I just try to, it's really difficult, but I try to do it with everyone and just try to accept where they're at and that that's okay for them and where they should be. And then people watch me all the time. And I know they talk about me. My family's even told me they talk about me behind their back. They're like, she did it again. How did she do that? You know, so they do watch your lives. So I think that thing where they said live by example, lead by example is really a good thing. But it is hard because we want to be accepted, but they do too. And it's really hard. It goes back to that thing against countries, and it happens in our own life, to be able to get along with others that aren't the same or don't have the same views. It is challenging, and you do get into the family patterns big time when you're in a family, big time. But when you're in a nation, when you're in a neighborhood, you know, and when you're in a city, it's tricky. But I think we all face it, especially when we're going against what the cultural norm is, you know, at that time for sure.
But, you know, I'll tell you a little side thing. Last year we had a family reunion. It was this big house. I've talked about it before. And it was such a big house that you had little groupings happening. And right. I felt like somebody was staring at me, you know, that feeling. And so I look over, and here's my sister, and she's talking to another 4 people there. And she's saying to them, you know, someday we're going to find out everything she told us is true. They actually heard her say that, and I just said, and I'm not going to ask you to thank me for it. You know, and that's what I try to tell people is that, you know, if you go into it to trying to explain something to somebody because you want to be right, you're wrong.
Right, correct.
You know, that's not the purpose of why you should be talking to somebody. It should be to help them.
Right.
Now, if you look at it from that standpoint of how can I help you? How can I make your life a little bit better? You know, we're more inclined, I think, to, you see, I feel like these people that we call sheeples or people that are asleep, the ones like that want to maintain their reality because it's the one that they understand, okay? And when we say anything to them and it challenges that reality, just like it challenges a religion, it challenges your political thing, you end up with confrontation. So it is true that the best example is yourself. Mm-hmm. You know? So I'm living a life that, for most people would be one that they would very much desire to live. Yep. And yet I live it in a mind that can, you know, think of all sorts of weird things and research and write about them. You know, so look at me. Am I unhappy like you are? No. You know, do I have problems like you do? Not really. You know, and the only difference between you and me is the way I think. So I'm not doing anything different. I've never had all through my life I've had to work. I've gone through the same things that you guys have gone through, you know, everybody. I'm talking you guys in a general sense. But because I learned to think in a certain pattern, and I'm still learning. You know, still trying to get to that point where, you know, the other Friday night, my friend Cindy's here. And I started having a conversation with myself. And normally I have these silently, but I was like, well, no. And I'm talking back and forth to myself like I'm talking, you know, like there's 2 conversations. I said, this is the way I live. I actually do talk to myself this way. I said, you know, and she was just howling because she said, well, I do too. But I've never seen it so demonstrated, you know, and it's like people don't even have those conversations with themselves. You know, something comes up in their heads and they go, I'm not going to think about that. You know, and they don't. And even
not me, I debate it.
Yeah. Maybe that's the difference, you know, is that we believe that, you know, we're multifaceted and we have so many levels of consciousness and, you know, there's that matrix programming that's there and sometimes that kicks in and, you know, it takes a long time to unravel that. So the people that are out there and they don't want to unravel it, you know, they would rather not unravel it. They also have, it hasn't changed. The reality is what they think it is. All right. Now let's just look at what their reality is. Their reality is, oh yeah, there's shit happens. You know, there's always something. Oh my God, I haven't had any bad thing happen to me lately. It's about to happen. They can go through all that. But the big things, the really, really big things, like the depopulation of the world so that there's only 500 million. The concept of, that 9/11 was an inside job in order to make the American people so afraid that they would go to war with Iran and Iraq and anybody else that they can possibly fight with, Syria.
The entire Middle East.
The Middle East, we're at war with the Middle East because there's a rumor that there's terrorists live there because they're Muslims, and I'm saying it's a rumor because the terrorists are not the people that you say they are. 9/11, analyze it, look at it real. You'll find out that the so-called terrorists, 5 of them are still alive. The whole thing is BS. But if you can just let them sleep for a little bit longer, they also don't believe that there'll be an end of the world. And because of that belief, because they still have the numbers. Now we can say, oh God, there could be an end of the world. But we don't get behind it. We get behind, no, we're going to just change the world. We're not going to have that happen to us. But those people that are absolutely in denial of all the real evil and bad are keeping that reality stable so that the really evil people keep trying to do their evil things and it keeps blowing up in their face. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Let's not wake them up too fast. Let's convince them that there's a better way. It's not that your way isn't there. Yes, it works very well. It's a perfectly working reality. They've got you all controlled. But come to our reality, where you're the most important person in it. Not the state, not the corporations, not the bankers. You are, because you're a human being. And, from the moment that you were conceived, you were somebody special. So...
And the older I get, the more I realize that fact, too. That is a true statement. Everyone who is born is special.
Well, it comes down to that saying, there's 7 billion people on the earth, but God wanted you.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody should focus on.
Yeah.
How important each and every person is. And, if that's a cult, I'm with it. Nobody's more important than I am. I like that cult. Because if I'm not right, my surroundings aren't right. If you're not right, your surroundings aren't right. It's just basic common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I found that happened this last week that was absolutely pretty incredible. Now, you guys know the story of Shungite. I wrote the book Cosmic Reality, realized that you have to have consciousness in order to manifest, figured there's a super consciousness, creator God type of thing called Gaia that's in charge of this biosphere we call Earth. And when I committed to support her needs, she gave me Shungite. And Shungite has so many absolute magical qualities to it that it's very baffling. Because it's like every time you turn around, you're going like somebody else is telling you that this one guy said to me, he was a customer, he said, I bought your stuff before, it's the only reason my wife is alive. And we were getting all these testimonials and everything, seemed to be fine, and the store's doing good, everybody's doing good. And then Sharonata says, we need some scientific backup to what we're saying. And I said, okay, I'll go back and I'll research it some more, because we were, people say things that we just disagree with. It's not true. They keep cutting and pasting somebody else's stuff. If they'd start cutting and pasting me and my group, they get closer to the truth, but they keep doing, But anyway, so she said that, and then that magical manifestation thing that happens. Every year she's had situations where it's not breast cancer. I don't exactly know what it was, but she had some issues with problems with her breast, and she was able to use healing modalities in order to get rid of it. But she's going to get this thermography session done yearly, okay? So she brings this girl in who is going to do thermography. Now, thermography is a way of looking at the heat signature in, well, not only the human body, they actually use it in buildings and stuff, in engineering. But it looks inside the human body to see where there's a heat signature that shouldn't be there, because when you've got the precancerous cells, they're putting out energy that is discordant and therefore causing heat. So you see this long before you would see anything that was detectable in a mammogram. And the woman that Carol, I don't remember her last name, and I do apologize, Carol, but she had this ability to do the thermography, and she also had by that time gotten into shungite. So they began to, after they did the normal scheduled one, they had Sharonata go on a telephone for 2 minutes. And during that 2 minutes, Carol kept taking pictures and seeing the heat signature as she was on a 2-minute phone call. Wow. It was absolutely scary. All right, absolutely scary. But then they did it, and they put a shungite sticker on the phone. And the results were startling, because a phone in her hand that had turned the palm of her hand as bright red as you've ever seen. It even had areas that were absolutely white that shouldn't have been there. You've got a hand that never changed. The phone changed very little.
Wasn't the white in the thyroid?
No, this was in the palm. There was white in the thyroid area too. One of the things that I kept seeing, see, I'm a layperson. I don't know anything about this. They present it and they give me all these slides, and I'm going like, oh my God, what does this mean? So I studied each slide and, figured out, okay, I can see how they took the pictures, and now I'm seeing what these pictures really mean. And I did put up a YouTube on it. I should get you I'll get you the link. And the area of the neck, like halfway down the neck and then into almost the shoulder area, there was red no matter what was doing it. It was just, even in the baseline, the picture that they took before she ever picked up the phone, there was this redness. And I got interested in it, so I looked at a visual image of what's in the neck, and indeed the thyroid is could be right in that same area. So, you pick up stuff like, that I hadn't even thought of until I started studying. And then I saw in her jaw area there were 2 red spots, even in the baseline picture. And I asked Stephanie, I said, find out from Sharonata why she's got these 2, and she has dental work. She's got metal in her teeth in exactly those 2 places. As I'm looking at the slides, I'm seeing that these dental plate things are getting redder and redder, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and I'm going like, man, it looks like the cell phone, which is a microwave system, is heating up that metal. And if you throw tinfoil into a microwave, it's going to blow the machine up. So I'm thinking, well, wow, is it heating metal in? Because we got magnetite and aluminum in our brains. Is that possibly some weird thing that's happening just because the microwave signal is there? Because it's no longer affecting the cells. When you saw the S4, the Sharonata's face, the side of her face was just absolute complete red from the top of her head all the way down through her shoulder. When you see the S4, you do see some yellowing and you see a little bit of red, but you do not see anything like without it. But my point being is that Sharonata inadvertently had set in motion, because she had said we need more science, a modality of testing a lot of the shungite and the products that we've got out there already empirically, so that we can show people. And Stephanie's sister who's been with us from the get-go, she was like, yeah, she wears the shungite, and yeah. But she never could get behind pushing, get people to use it. It just wasn't part of her nature. And after she saw that video, she said, give me those stickers. I'm going to get these stickers to people. So what I'm saying is that we have a magical gift from Gaia, shungite, that can at least begin to fight back against the electromagnetic and Wi-Fi systems that are, in my opinion, well, I think it's stupid. I think it started out as stupidity, that they didn't know about the rotating electric fields, that if you rotate, counterclockwise, you're going to disrupt the cells. I don't know if that was conspiracy. Walt is convinced it's conspiracy, that they did it to kill us to begin with. But I just want people to know, and I will get that link up for you, that shungite is does, and now we're getting the empirical proof, allow you to get more balance. Because one of the problems that we all have is, like we've been talking about, the changes in energy. They can be from an astrological change, or it could be from the fact that you have moved into an area where there's a lot of electronic pollution. And if we were given this gift that doesn't make any scientific, the science that we know about is not a science that is considered mainstream. So if we're looking at it and we can find a science, God bless us, but the fact of the matter is that Gaia gave us a gift that scientifically they can't really explain from the mainstream way of doing it. If Gaia can give us a gift that will free us from some extraordinarily damaging and debilitating energies, what else can she do? We're not alone. We have the angels, we know that, but we've got Gaia herself. And thank God I've got Stephanie Dietz in my life, because she never, ever forgets it's Gaia, that we're doing this because she gave us this gift. And I'm just pointing out to you guys that we're not alone. Not only do we have each other in this fight, but we also have Gaia, and the archangels, and the little angels, and the elves, and the animals, and the plants. We're not alone. We are a tremendous force, and if we just kind of stay focused on it, we're going to be good. Deb? Dolly?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That the radiation and everything from the electronics and what we see on those thermograms, I think, is inflammation, the heat, because inflammation's heat. And we're also inflamed in our thinking, but our environment, and if the shungite can cool that down, I mean, that's where they say a lot of brain tumors come from holding the cell phones, but especially the mobile phones in the house, which a lot of us don't have anymore. Those were super high too. And then of course we've got the cell towers and everything. It's our whole system being inflamed. And I do wonder if Walt, you hate to think like that, but there's a lot of evidence out there now that is occurring. And they probably know that too, whoever created these things. I'd like to think they didn't. But even if they find out, why haven't these changes been being made?
Well, and according to Walt, they could have made them so that they were, we call it biocompatible, that they would, it's not counterclockwise and clockwise, it's really a left and right spin, but people seem to be, to relate to the concept of counterclockwise versus clockwise. But it's just a rotation of the spin. And that if it's rotating in concert with the rotation of your cells, everything is fine. If it's the opposite, then they start fighting each other, and that's when you get inflammation, heat buildup. But the scary, really scary part about it was the telephone call was for 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's nothing.
It took her 20 minutes to get back to the baseline. 20 minutes to cool down.
Wow.
And that's sitting in an air-conditioned house.
Wow.
So, but what, you know, and seriously, when you see this video, I mean, because I put it together, and that night I was having a hard time falling asleep because I kept seeing the pictures. You know, to imagine that we're doing, and people are doing this to themselves all day long, cooking their brains.
Yep.
So, but again, it's a gift from Gaia. You know, we have an empirically proven, you know, it's a little sticker, you put it on your phone, and it changes the rotation of the Wi-Fi coming through. Now, we're going to have to do a lot more looking at it because, like I say, there was some yellowing, and a little bit increase in the reds. Nothing compared, but I still didn't think I would see anything. But I'm kind of suspicious that it's a basic microwave system that's bouncing off the metal that's in our heads. Because in the ear canal, all right, there was all this red, real dark red, even when she was at the baseline. And yet, there's heavy metals that build up in the earwax. And if you've got little traces of metal in your ear, perhaps that's what's heating up and causing the number one, they get tumors in the ear canal, and that's the number one thing that they can directly attribute to the cells, to the cell phones.
Wow. Well,
Yes.
that's why when we go to different areas that have a lot of mineral content, it affects us different, like Sedona or different places. And, you know, a lot of our technology, it's so funny how Mother Earth has all our solutions and all our remedies. But, you know, man in our wonderful self just keeps trying to recreate it so they can make a profit. And we've got all we need, but it's real interesting what goes on here. But we're definitely electromagnetic, and we're definitely being pinged, if you call it that. You know, we're definitely being activated by a lot of these things, and our systems have a hard time handling it.
Absolutely. I just is Lee still here? I didn't even realize Lee was still here. I thought maybe she hadn't turned off her computer and Skype.
She just put a note in the chat that she's off to celebrate.
Yay! Have fun, Lee.
Yeah, have fun.
But you know, they want us to get the mammograms, and I love my doctor. I finally found one that's really smart and educated, but also has watched how I am and is appreciative, which is hard to get because there's pressure on them too. But I won't do mammograms, but I'll do the I can't say that word. How do you say it? The
thermography.
Yeah. And he goes, well, I don't even know where they do it. And I said, well, I know where they do it because there's a place in North LA, but I'm on Medicare because I'm on disability, and so far that's not covered. So I'd have to pay out of my own pocket. But if I ever feel the need, I will do that. I think that's a safer way. And like you said, it is more accurate and can really show you where your body's trying to tell you need help.
Again, it comes back down to the money. They've got all this money put into mammograms.
Yeah.
And instead, they could go to thermography where people, it is very simple. It's a computer program and a camera.
Right, and it's not radiating you at all.
No, it's just reading the heat signature.
Yep.
Well, I'm wondering, women that wear the long dangly earrings, if the waves from the cell phones and through those metals, because, you know, the danglies go right into the lymph.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
The lymph, not limp, but I wondered about that.
That's a good point.
When we were taught, don't wear rings. They even say take your metal glasses off when you do energy, or, you know, and don't wear tight clothing, especially around certain areas, like your bra, your underwear, or pants. I quit wearing pants. And then I also read,
what?
I can't remember, Navajo women would wear dresses and it was a hoop, and they believed that that's what gave them some of their power, because they were creating a circle on the planet beneath their feet from the circular dress so they could pull that power and that energy up from Mother Earth. And there's just a lot about our energy fields we don't know.
In the long hair, people believe that long hair is like an antenna.
Yep. But the metal, Colleen, that's something interesting with the earrings. I hadn't thought of that. I haven't worn them for years, or rings. But if we're going to add metal to our body, and we've already got the metal in our ears and in our blood, we've got iron. Yeah, I wonder.
Well, I wonder about all these kids, especially today, that are getting pierces in their eyebrows, their nose I can't say because I've got those pierced too. That. I don't have more than one.
In your nose?
I have, yes, I used to have a earring in my nose.
I like those. But yeah, I wonder if that does anything. I don't know. Or in their lips. Oh, they get everything
their lips.
In their tongue.
Yeah, labres and various other body parts.
Yeah.
And they're also saying the underwire bras, which I wore for, gosh, a long time. I don't think well, shut up. So I wonder about those as well.
I don't do that anymore either.
Well, usually only when I go out. But
actually, Lee Brown was the first person I know that was courageous enough to go without a bra.
I shouldn't say this. I haven't worn one for years. Even when I was working in the professional environment, I always made sure, I had a thicker outfit on, and I always wore an overshirt or overcoat. And I haven't worn it, and I haven't worn pants for really since 99 almost. And it was my Reiki training. I took it serious, and now I won't go any further. I think I've divulged too much already.
Yeah, well, I do have going out bras.
I do too, but don't use it much.
Girls sleep in it. I was like, what? Why would you sleep with your bra on? I can't even stand them, let alone sleep in them. But yeah, going out one, I do that too if it's some big wedding or special event, But it's all for looks, and it's all that cultural thing. And
it does also make your shirts fit.
Actually, I wear it so I don't trip over them.
Well, I was going to say it makes your shirts fit better because you have to get one that allows for more room down there because they're no longer up there.
But if you look at all the cultures in, Africa and different places, so that was the norm. That's how women look when they get older. It's just our silly, plastic culture that wants everybody to look a certain way. And it's like, what is that about? Oh, don't get me started.
Oh my goodness.
Because youth.
Yeah,
became
one of those. It was so much of, women, you look at just the dressing and stuff and it's like, are we crazy? The high heels. I mean, what in the hell is that about?
No woman designed them.
We're selling sex in our culture. Sex. We're gonna make women
I forgot about that.
Like a sexual object. That's what that's all about. My opinion.
Yes, and I'm thinking, okay, back in the day, when if a woman was caught, we'll say with her pants down and her skirt up, she was an easy target. Perhaps because women are shorter than males, they put them in heels to put them at the right height, we'll say.
That's interesting.
Isn't it strange how my mind works?
You do come up with some interesting things.
Okay.
I will have to look at the situation again with a new way of looking at it.
Plus, they say those heels elongate the leg, do something to the boobs, change the position of the spine, and it's supposed to be more sexual. And there's some weird thing, but I've never thought about it with making the girl taller.
Well, you look at these heels that they're wearing now.
Oh my gosh.
That
Crazy.
So much changes the posture that they're kind of stooped over.
Yep.
And it's not a natural gait that they're walking. It's almost robotic because they have to use really small steps to keep their balance. And my thought is, how the world can anyone think that that is attractive? Because, I mean, they look like really little old ladies. I mean, their posture and the tiny steps and stuff, and then all bent over and stuff. I'm like, what the hell's that all about? But if you watch television from time to time, I sometimes pass it on my way to go get the mail. You see some of these women with their talk shows, and you see them walking onto the stage, and you're like, for real? Don't you ever watch your own shows to see what that's doing to your body, your spine, your back, your hips, your everything? I'm just amazed that, oh my gosh. Anyway, I digressed. I'll hush now and let y'all get on with your conversation.
No, it's interesting. It's so funny when you started talking about it, my computer went all robotic. I don't know if anybody else is having
Well, we seem to have lost. You're kind of cutting in and out, Deb.
Okay, and you are too to me. So is anybody else having a problem?
No, but I think you're back. I think it might have been momentarily.
Huh.
I hope.
Okay. Well, with the spine, I read an article recently that was saying actually the best way spine, I was like, wow, is when in the Aboriginal cultures they carry the baskets and the things on their head.
Oops.
And that keeps your spine and your body in alignment and makes it strong. Isn't that fascinating? It certainly heals.
Well, I think it forces you to hold your spine in alignment to keep the thing balanced. Would be why. So it's exercise, really.
Yep.
Who was it that was telling us a story? Colleen, you must remember this, of somebody, an anthropology group studying a village in Africa or something. I don't even remember what it was because I wasn't paying attention until they came to the punchline. And all of the women were stooped over. They had this really problematic posture thing. And they couldn't figure out why were all these people having this same stooped over, back curvature type of situation. And it turned out that they used very short brooms. And when they took the short brooms and gave them long brooms, then they didn't have the issue anymore. Wasn't on one of our shows that somebody said that? I forget where I heard it. But I thought that was fascinating. That nobody made the connection between the short broom and this terrible chiropractic situation that the women were in.
Oh, yeah. Well, and using a broom anyway is hard on the back. When you're
Imagine you a small one.
Oh, yeah. And I've had to do that from time to time if for some reason the broom handle got broke. And it is no fun for sure and can age you quite quickly in the back.
it's sort of a great example of, you know, how people like, I mean, all of it, the shoes always freaked me out, you know, because it's like, why would you do that to yourself? I tried it. It's terribly painful in a lot of ways. So why are you doing this? What is it? And it is that concept that they're living for other people, not themselves. If you were living for yourself, you'd never put the damn things on your feet.
Right, because, you know, in the work world, there was a time when if you worked in a professional office, you had to wear heels. If you wore...
And nylons.
Oh, and nylons, yes. You know, so you had several layers of clothing and girdles and all that other stuff. So you had layer upon layer in an area that should get air. But yeah.
Deb, are you still having problems? Because she was saying, should I hang up? She couldn't follow the conversation. This sometimes happens that one person all of a sudden is having intermittent connection. Can you hear me okay, Deb? Maybe not.
No, I'm still really having spotty with everybody. I'm only hearing like every other word, and then it'll clear. So I didn't know if I should hang up or what I should do.
Yeah, go ahead and try that, and then when you come back on, maybe you may
It'll
need
call
to
me back.
Yeah, we'll call you back, or I'll see you back in there. And try that,
Okay.
and you may have to completely reboot your Skype.
Yeah, I'll do that. So you guys keep talking, I'll reboot, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was she acting like a cult leader to tell us to keep talking?
Oh, I'm glad. I hope she doesn't hear the replay. She's highly offended to be called a cult leader.
Well, where does the word culture come from?
A culture leader, yes. Yeah.
She's cultured.
Can you imagine Annette being in a cult?
Well, you know, last time Lee Brown was on and we were on with Annette, I didn't know whether Annette was so exhausted that she wasn't really engaged or whether she is much less skeptical than she ever was before. So I asked her and she said, well, you know, Lee seems to have just such a basic presentation of this is the way it is, you know, no big deal. That she kind of won Annette over, especially when I guess Lee had done a little reading on Annette, and Annette was stunned by the amount of information.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do. You need to get a reading for your father. Yeah?
I don't think so.
Give it to him for his birthday. Here's a birthday present for you, Dad. I'm going to have a psychic read you.
He wouldn't go. Oh, no.
That's
the devil in showing itself.
Yeah, but it might change his mind. I think, you know, Sassy Annette got less sassy as first Walt and then Lee Brown and somebody else. Oh, Deb, I think, did colors with her too. You know, like, oh my gosh, you know, maybe there is something here because they certainly have me pegged.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of it is just demonstrating. It's example again, you know. Live by example. Look at this is what I found out when I did this, you know. So. Yeah.
Well, I did walk away from the family, so that was one thing that was like a cult sign where they take you away from your family. I said, Dad, that would happen years ago because I've been listening and participating on the WSR for years. So that didn't happen.
Have you talked to Dave lately?
You know, I think I have, but in a different way. Last night I was really, really struggling to breathe. And I kept hearing, and I don't even know if I can explain how I kept hearing this. I kept hearing a voice like it was But when I heard the voice, it came to me in all capital letters. Yet I heard the voice at the same time I saw the words in all caps. Dolly, can you hear me? And it kept saying it over and over. Dolly, can you hear me? And I swore it was Dave. I felt his vibration. I thought it was his voice. Not like when I hear him usually now, but like when I heard him when he was here on Earth. And I finally was able to say, yes. What? But all I kept getting was that seeing in all caps the words, as well as thinking the thought, this is like LOL. And I don't know. I don't know what it was all about. But I think it was Dave. I even said, are you Dave? And I got the feel that I get from Dave, but I don't know what it was all about. I was too busy trying to stay here.
Interesting. Did you feel that it could have been some external signal trying to mimic Dave?
I didn't know because I thought about that too.
You would have. I know you would have.
I even said, if you are not Dave, you get the hell out of my head.
Because it's conceivable. I mean, we know that, like for instance, during near Halloween, that the veil is lessened for whatever reasons between the other side and this side. It's possible that the energy fluctuations we're detecting are also somehow, making it more difficult for him to get through. I don't know.
I don't know either. I really don't know what that was, because I was so busy trying to struggle to stay here. I got too much going on to go away. And I wasn't ready. But yet, when that voice came in, and the words, and I get the LOL connected with the words in all caps.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out what was going on, so I was asking all these questions, because, I'm not going to just go blindly and not do it. So I don't know if I've heard from Dave lately or not, but I have, before Sherry and Shannon came this last time. They were here Monday and Tuesday. They were only, and they stayed Tuesday night too, and they weren't supposed to, but she said, I'm not leaving right now, Mom. She wasn't liking the way I was looking, evidently. But just before they came, I think I was talking with Dave. I think it was that time. And we were having a pretty serious conversation there about things. And
Dolly, is Dave the first one that you've had a long-term kind of other side relationship with, or is this something that you've done with other people through your life?
Dave has been the first long-term relationship. Others come and go. They have a message for me to pass on to someone, and that's their main goal with me, because they know I can do it. Now Stan, of course, I've had a long term with him, but I've lost him. I've lost connection with Stan. I'm thinking Stan has come back to Earth.
Ah.
Yeah.
Dolly?
Yeah?
What my channeling teacher used to say, if that's the case, you can still connect sometimes, but it depends where he reincarnated in the world, if that's what happened, but when they're in sleep time, but you have to ask their permission, of course, but if they're in the same time zone or, in the United States, it would be late at night when they're asleep. Supposedly you can have better access, in that case. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I was told by my teacher.
I did have a couple times when he came through, and it was at nighttime too.
Yeah,
and he said, I love you, Dolly. I still love you.
Oh.
And it wasn't Dolly, it was Dee, because he always calls me Dee. I love you, Dee. And I asked him, where are you? But that was all I got. It was just brief, just real fast.
Yep. Now, Deb, do you have contact with the other side? Well, wait a minute. I'm gonna have you hold that thought because I just looked at the clock and we're at the top of the hour.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna take an hour break. We only got another hour to go here. We're doing good, and the reason that I looked was because the dog nudged me like, "Hey, lady."
Yeah, feed me.
Time to potty.
I gotta feed the dog in the next few minutes, and I will hopefully be back in time. But Colleen, you gonna give us a little tune here?
I sure will. You're listening to Haggy Shack Radio on HaggyShack.com. Simulcast to Wolf Spirit Radio. And we are back.
Give me a second. I gotta get this to the dog.
Okay. All righty. Is Dolly
still here?
I just got back. I'm sorry. I had to get something to eat.
Oh, you're good.
I fed the dog, so we're good to go. Deb, you back?
Yay! Yeah, we're all here.
Deb.
Yeah?
You probably have talked about some of your experiences, but, I mean, in other shows and stuff. But when you were, how did you get really on the path of doing this as a full-time type of thing? Did you fall into it, or did you decide you were going to take it?
Wow. Well, I'll have to think about it. It's been a while back. I know when JP first interviewed me, I went through the whole thing, but I haven't really thought about it in about a year. But I was a hairdresser. That was my first career, and I went to the bars a lot. And I liked music, and I did the musician's hair, and all this was going on, but basically it really started for me to really step into it more, even though I've always had all this and always studied it. When I decided I was tired of the bar scene, and that, and I started my hair salon, it was really successful. What did I want to do with my time if I didn't go out? And I was laying on my bed. Everything always happens when I'm laying on the bed, and then I'm like, I look over and I see my bookshelf with all books on healing, polarity, energy work, astrology, and I'm like, okay, it's time. So I took my first psychic development class and told my family, and it created a bunch of ripples, but, we went through that. It was like coming out of the closet in a weird way. And then I took a year of astrology professionally. I had never done either one of those things, and immediately learned that I was an energy healer without realizing it, got trained in Reiki, and then it just was a progression. My salon, I moved it, I got more popular, I traveled a bit, I did all, and then one day what started to happen is this is just how I perceived it. I felt like I was growing by leaps and bounds, and that the people in my chair, and I love them all, were all telling me the same stories they told me every month for years. And I was starting to tune them out, you know, and I just was, because it wasn't as interesting to me as what I was doing in my other part of my life. And then one day I found Aura-Soma, and that was the color system, and then that pulled me. Then I wanted to do that. I started learning that, and then I was looking for somewhere else to live, and I came into a little bit of money, and off I went, scared out of my mind. But by the time I got to the panhandle of Florida, I lived in southern Florida then, it was like I was free. And so, you know, I moved to Sedona by myself, and then a couple other towns before I landed where I was. And I was out of money then, so I just picked a normal job, but immediately, you know, when I gave my boss a color reading, they scooped me up and used me in that capacity. So that's kind of how I got into actually doing it professionally. And then the astrology followed. I'd only done it as a hobby. You know, I just always loved it. I never really charged, but a bunch of my clients, color reading clients, the place I worked wanted me to do it professionally there too, but I wouldn't, because I'm like, let's get one thing going well before we add another thing, you know. And but I did do some professional astrology on the side, but color's definitely my favorite. So that's kind of how I got into it. But I've always been into all of this stuff. But that's how it started when it went professional.
Well, do you have access to the other side, which was the question before the break? Do you communicate with the...
I have a lot of skills that I don't talk about or advertise. I mean, some of my good friends don't even know. But I've had a lot of training, and I definitely have a lot of sensitivity, and mostly I do it for my own use. But even just walking around, I have a hard time in crowds. People love to drive with me because all kinds of weird things happen, and I pick up energies of locations. I can look at a map if I'm sitting with somebody and go, I'll just automatically point to the areas that might be good for them. So I have all these different things, but I just try to fit them in, you know, where they're needed. But no, I've never put a shingle up for any of the other things.
So the other things, were not, you were not trained in the other things. This was just naturally evolving.
Well, I've had a lot of these, but I didn't know what it was, and I have been trained in a few of them. But, you know, had further education, and of course I've read all about them, but I did have a channeling teacher. You know, I have been trained in energy work. I did a lot of things with two great teachers and a psychic development, and then I've been trained with the astrology now, you know, with two good teachers, besides all my self-taught. But I mean, when I was little, it's hard to remember it all, but I stayed alone a lot. I was very shy. I was so sensitive, and I didn't even think about it, but I realized just recently I would see faces around my bed, and I didn't know what they were. And then I remember often looking out, and I still do it. Birds fly in my house all the time, even though I even have a cat now. And I would talk to the birds through the window. But I mean, I was like 2. So I don't really know what was going on. I know I cried a lot. I was super sensitive. It was hard for me to take road trips. I love to travel, but if there was a dead animal, and then I had a lot of deja vu, and I have a lot of things that happen to me when I go in certain locations or buildings. And so I'm super sensitive through my body somehow. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just weird. And so I like to stay alone a lot, but I love people. And I'm very quiet if I'm by myself, but if there's anybody around, I need to communicate and connect. So the way I can keep myself sane and my energy good is to go in and out. So I'm by myself a lot, and then I'll go out, and then I have to go back in. And so that's that.
Because so many of us, I think, have, well, for all I know, everybody has latent, you know, I'm sure they have latent abilities. And it intrigues me to know, because like I say, I don't think I was necessarily born with the latent powers manifesting. I sort of and I never took training. I was self-learned. I'd read books
Right.
about subjects and stuff like this.
Yep.
But it's one of those situations kind of that, the child is in peril, and the mother does superhuman things to get the child out of that situation. It was sort of like when bad situations were happening, it was like I would go to a heightened level of perceiving. It's almost like things would get real slow motioning.
Yes.
But I would be seeing things in a much different way. And I think that was just, it is where we should be, but you're thrown into it because of a crisis situation. And
they say that. I've read articles about, I read different things still. I'm always, where psychic sensitives, mediums, that a lot of times it was a self-protective defense mechanism just to be able to get along in the family dynamics, which I don't know how true that is or not, but I did have a friend once that worked for the CIA, and I can't remember what country he was in. I met him in Sedona. He was a fascinating gentleman, and he would fly planes with two other people into these countries where they could die at any minute, and they were trained not to talk, that they had to trust each other with their lives. And that's when he felt the most alive, because it does heighten all your senses, and you do kind of go into that extra sensory thing. But I think I think some people are come in with that naturally, and also you may feel like that on this planet if it's not necessarily your vibration. It's like there's an acclimation period, and sometimes it's your whole life. But because until about the age of 30, I was constantly out of body. I mean, constantly. And it was actually that gentleman that helped me with it, because I was threatened, especially by the medical, and anybody I perceived, especially that was male, that I felt might have power over me. And so I would still be aware of everything that went on, but I would fly out of body. So I was watching it from somewhere else. And he was the one that kept teaching me, be here now. And then there was a book out, I can't remember the name, because I fought it tooth and nail, and I've met other people that have fought it. And my one channeling teacher said a lot of spiritual people come in with the upper chakras open and the lower ones aren't operating. And instead of where most people have to open their chakras from the ground up, and raise them, that some people come in and need to pull the energy down and ground into their body and into the planet. And I fought it because I was really comfortable out of body. It was safer to me. It was a vibration I was used to and that I liked. But now I did it. And it took a while, a few years. First I had to agree to it and consciously say, yes, I'm going to do this. And I kept being taught, you can't be effective on this plane unless you do this, and there's nothing to be afraid of. And so I did it, and I love it here now. I mean, I don't love everything that goes on, but I'm happy being in my body and on the planet. So how would you, I like to try to find out if we can give anybody, some kind of really concrete way of at least exploring their own psychic capabilities. Do you have any advice along that line? Yeah, a few things. First thing, you have to figure out what is the best way you get your communication, because there's several different avenues it comes in. One of mine is touch, and it's inner hearing, but most of all, it's feeling, like an emotion or a feeling I get, and my body gives me lots of information. Like if I feel constricted, or I'm holding my breath, or like when I get all excited about a conversation, I get red, like So that's giving me lots of information. But when you're asleep, I read something recently, and when JP had kind of talked me into starting my blog, maybe I'll do it again, the one where I write things. But I kind of like being undercover and just having my own life and then talking about it. But I'm not sure, I don't know yet if I want to go back into it. But I'd written an article about this because I read, and it was such good, and I tried it, it really works. When you're asleep at night, and you wake up in the morning or whenever you wake up and you're starting to come to consciousness, but you're not all the way awake. Notice right away when you're aware, that there's something else in the room. Don't open your eye, just lay there for a second and think, what do I notice first? Am I hearing a sound? Am I seeing something? Am I smelling something? Am I feeling something? Or am I just knowing I'm awake? And then whatever's the first thing that comes in to your consciousness when you're awakening, that's often your strongest sense. Then once you figure out what's your way of getting information the strongest, we were taught, and it really worked well with me because the thing is trusting it and not thinking it's just your imagination. Every hit, what I call a hit you get during the day, I did this for a month. They taught me this in the first psychic development class I had taken, well, the only class I took, but is keep a little journal and write down, say you meet somebody, write down your first instinct. No one needs to see this, and it's not being judgmental, just write down what you notice. Or if you're thinking about somebody and what you're thinking about them, just little things that go through our head that we never pay attention to or we blow off. And keep a journal. Then go back every week, or maybe 2, and read them all and put check marks by all the ones that were accurate, that came to be, or that ended up being right. And you will be amazed. And then you'll start to trust what you're getting more and more. And the trusting and the playing with it and knowing if you can imagine and it can be, all start enhancing it. And then, of course, when you start doing readings, I was scared to death. I'm a really picky Virgo, and I like to do things correct. And it was horrifying for me to first professionally do readings because I want everything perfect. And so I was like, oh my God, what if I say the wrong thing? But now I always say a prayer right before. Let me say the right words. Let the right words come to me, through my mouth in a way that they can hear it and that will be most beneficial. And then I just had to let go. And it's hard for people to let go. But when you do it like that, at the end of almost every reading I've ever done, they're like, wow, how did you do that just from color? So it's just, the biggest thing is finding out, being tuned in enough to your own system, your own body, your own form of communication, realizing it, then paying attention to it and trusting it. And you're not going to be 100% right all the time, but if you're really clear, it becomes pretty accurate. And it's a guidance system. I think we all have it to keep us from harm. That was the original thing, but really it's just good information to just help guide us through our daily life. And it's the noisy mind that kind of gets in the way of it. And the noisy life, in my opinion.
There was the University of Miami had a class, an adult class on, I don't even know what they called it, but it was Psychic 101, something along those lines.
Right.
And I got kind of dragged to this by a friend of mine. I really didn't want to go. I was there because of her, and it was like I really wasn't that interested in it. I mean, it was weird. I must have been, when I would have been in probably about 22. And so we go to this thing, and the woman, one of the first things that she said was, something about, where do you think you're going to go after you die? And she was asking the class, and she comes to me and I said, I ain't going to die. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, this body will change. Because remember, I remembered reincarnations.
Right.
You know, so I said, well, this body will die, but I'm not going to die. I don't die. You know, and I don't even know what the class would have thought about that or what, but she asked me a question, I gave her an answer. I would not at that moment have said that I had psychic abilities. I remembered my past life. That was about it. But she had us pair off with some stranger, like not my friend, but somebody else. And you're right. It was like we're just kind of like not even talking to one another, just kind of like scanning, looking at each other.
Yeah.
And we had to write down what we were seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I had all these weird little images, like the one that sticks in my mind is a red car. And she drove a red car.
See?
You know, and then, I don't remember, I don't even know how many times we went to this class. It might have been only the one time, I don't know, but it was probably more than that. But there was another episode where she had us paired off, and I'm not at all sure what the, you know, point of this exercise was, but we had to just hold each other's hands and then get, you know, into our own bodies, and I don't even remember if they were talking us through it or what it was, but I just sort of like, it was, I think I probably had done it before, but this was kind of like a really knowing going in to kind of analyze my own body, my own way of thinking, you know, and I'm sure I went places that she would never have anticipated, but I ended up kind of focusing on my heart. And I wonder, don't ask me why, I wonder if you can stop your heart from beating, you know? So I proceed, huh?
I don't know, but I know it has the biggest electromagnetic field they've found now. So it definitely, you get a lot of information through it. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, but I was doing it just because I was playing with the, you know, the concept of energies in my own body, you know?
Yeah.
And so I decided I was going to, you know, see if I could stop my own heart. And all of a sudden this girl that I'm connected to, she virtually jumps up. She's still got my hands, but she jumps up and she goes, "Are you all right?" And, you know, I kind of like,
it.
and I realized that, damn it, I think I did stop my heart. And so I was saying to my friend, you know, we're on our way home, and I went, you know, I think I gave myself a heart attack. And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, blah, blah, blah," and start my heart. And she went into just peals of laughter. She thought it was the funniest thing she ever heard. I went home and I fell asleep, and I never woke up for 3 days.
Wow. Wow. She probably felt it because that's another thing. I'm really good at holding someone's hand. I wouldn't even have to do the colors. I can just hold their hand and I will get stuff from them. I'll get it from them anyway, but it just takes me longer, where the color gives me an avenue right into their subconscious. I don't know why, but that's fascinating. She felt it, and it something must have happened if you
She said it felt like you had left.
See? Wow, that's pretty interesting. I haven't heard anything quite like that, but I totally think something happened there. And she felt it, and then you had to recover for 3 days. Wow.
Yeah, so I don't think about my heart stopping at any time, you know?
No.
I've been there, I've done that, you know?
Wow.
But when you were talking about your first, you know, psychic 101 kind of class, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. But it was when it was the red car. All of a sudden I remembered the red car and how, and other odd things that there's no way I should have known that from that woman.
Exactly.
It made an impression on me, obviously, that, you know, you're going like, well, that's really, really very, very interesting. Now, by that time, I had had this experience with telepathy that I write about in Cosmic Reality and talk about quite often because it's so telling, that we were doing a game, and it was playing like you've got a telepath, you know, in the house. And you took 36 cards and you put them so they were face up, so you got 6 across and 6 at the bottom. And you'd have one of you, my roommate and I were partners at this, she's the one that taught me it. And so one of us would pretend to be the telepath, the medium,
right.
And the other one would have the mark, you know, pick out a card. And based on the position of that card, you know, it was like man, woman, child, insect, fowl, something else. You'd pass the information, you know, you'd say, my brother's son, well that's a man, so you'd know the position was, 2 and 2. So, this one girl, who was a mark, said, can I try being the telepath? And she got the next 5 cards right.
Wow.
And she did not know it was a scam. So at that point we said, oh my God, this is amazing. And so we, as a group, there was like 6 or 7 of us, 6 good to always kind of playing the game. We began to use telepathy, try to do telepathic, and we found that we got better at it as we understood it. And also we found that certain people had a different way of operating. Some people wanted to see, like we started out with cards. And so you'd start out with red or black, And if some people, if you sent the word black, they'd hear it clearly. If you sent the color black, they may not see it. And then sometimes it was reversed. Exactly. And we also found that certain people worked better with other people.
Yes.
So there was a lot of just kind of variables and in the mechanism of telepathy. And that's why I, tell people that, yes, you can develop telepathy. And that I'm trained at it because we self-trained. We learned as we went. And, it got to the point where we didn't use anything like cards or anything else. We just think of numbers or things or places and, we'd meet each other on the campus and we just stare at each other,
but that's another way.
But that ended up taking me to the highest echelons of the U.S. military, being able to do that. Now, I called it long-range telepathy, and technically it's remote viewing. Right. But the more you practice at it, the better you get. Now, unfortunately, you can get very good at it. And I had one guy, I taught when I started this special unit that we had, I really brought the people in based on how fast I could train them in telepathy. Mm-hmm. And so all of my people were, well, it wasn't very many of us, there was like 4 of us were trained, that they operated telepathically day by day. That's the way we operated, Just send me the thought. Yep. And so we had this major that I was working a project with, and he gets in there and he says, he starts laughing. I was reading a report that his people had done that I needed to look at. And as I'm reading it, he starts to laugh, and I said, what's the matter? And he said, well, this is the strangest office. He said, none of you ever finish a sentence. And I said, well, that's because we use telepathy. And he belly laughed, right? So a couple of days later, I had the update for this report, and I go down to his office, and I'm sitting there, and I had to read another report. And I'm sitting there reading his report again, and he starts having a sexual fantasy about me. So I finished the report before he finished the fantasy, and you know how men are, you can tell by what their faces look like, what the hell they're thinking about. And so I said to him, do you remember the other day you were in my office and I told you we used telepathy? And he went from, and he got bright red, and I said, yes, and to explain to you, how accurate telepathy is, let me relate the sexual fantasy you just had. And I did. Not in the details that he had gone through, but, basically. And he got so enthralled with it that he actually became my best student as far as,
good.
Learning telepathy. But that ended up in him, divorcing his wife because he realized she was cheating on him.
Oh no, because he got so good at it.
He got too good at it.
Yep. Yeah, well, that's really important because you can tune into some people's frequencies easier, especially in the beginning. When I used to practice it, once I realized some of the things that were going on, I had a friend that worked at the hair salon, the one I worked at before I had my own shop, and we were always thinking of each other or calling each other at the same time. So I said, hey, we're good at this. Why don't we play? Do you want to play? And always think of it as play or practice. And what you focus on does give it energy. And the more you do it, you know, it really does get stronger. So what we would do during the day is if either one of us had the other one cross our mind, we would look at the clock and we'd write down the time that we thought of them and if there was any message, you know. And then the other person would do the same thing. And then when we would get together at dinner, because she had a hair salon too, and we would get together. I think at that point I was already in my own hair salon and she was at hers or something, and we'd have dinner and then we'd compare notes, and dang it, if it wasn't almost to the minute. You know, she was thinking at me at 5:10 and she crossed my mind at 5:10. So there's simple little things you can just do in your everyday life, and that's part of your journal too. You know, how many times do we think of somebody and they call, and then you don't know who's the receiver or sender, but sometimes if you're really tuned into each other, you're both. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool story you had, and that's why he was so good at it, because you picked up on him right away, so you had a really good line between both of you, you know, and then he was intrigued and able to learn it really well, because he was already sending really well, and you were already receiving really well.
Yes, and you know, I mean, but again, it was like I went from college and into the military, and I needed to use that extra information because my job ended up being the Soviet expert for the Army, with and also electronic warfare expert. So, in order to get information, I would use long range telepathy.
Right.
Like, for instance, we had a vehicle that was picked, the CIA, I was in a really unique place, but the CIA, anytime they were anywhere, I had access to their photographs and what they're seeing and, you know, reports and stuff. And they come up with this picture of a truck that's got electronic gear on it that nobody had seen before. And so I knew where the coordinates were, I knew where the truck was, and so I just kind of sat back and imagined myself standing outside in front of this truck. Yep. And boom, I was there. And
do you know that's how prayer and how Reiki and healing energy work? It's exactly almost how it works. You don't picture yourself there, but sometimes you can. You can picture yourself holding the person, hugging the person. You don't even have to get technical with it. You are sending love from your heart. It will do the job. And that, you know, people, on a simple level, that's what prayer and healing energy, distance healing is. Almost the same thing. But you were using it to be there to get details of what was happening there and bring it back. It's just a different form and a different reason for using it. But in your
I was actually able to walk up the stairs, and I didn't open the door, I walked through the door. And then I was looking over the shoulder of a Soviet technician,
so cool.
And I could read the Russian in English. In other words, I knew I was seeing Russian, but it was being translated in my brain, which can't translate Spanish, into, you know, from the Russian into English.
And you don't have any psychic ability.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is that it all came from being basically trained in telepathy and then understanding, because yes, once you get attuned to that, you were attuned to all of these other 6 people. So even if you weren't having, you know, 3D communication with them, you kind of like knew where they were.
Yeah.
You know, and knew how they were feeling. And there was a lot of things that you kind of pick up, and at the time I didn't address them, and I didn't realize the full implications.
Right.
You know, it's when you've worked with it. It's like when person after person is telling you something, and you're reading their mind, and their words aren't matching what's in their head.
Right.
You know, you're gonna walk around and say you're a friggin' liar. You're a friggin' liar. Because that's what you're hearing all over the place, because people were playing such mind games. Remember, I'm in the military, too.
Yeah, man, that's not easy.
You know?
Well, Mattman in the chat wanted to know if you have to match, excuse me, the other person's frequency for the telepathy to happen?
I would say yes in the beginning especially, but after you get as good, I think you automatically will do that. But I think in the beginning it's helpful to have someone that's on a similar frequency as you, just so that you can make the connection. But after you're practiced at it, what do you think, Nancy? Because I think after you're practiced, you can just do it. It happens automatically. Because when you tune in, I've read a million different types of people and frequencies. And you just automatically connect to that frequency temporarily, I think.
It's you got a tuner in your head.
Yep.
Okay, and it is a tuner, just like a radio tuner. So if you've got an AM tuner, you're going to only hear AM people. Right. If you've got an FM, you're only going to hear FM people. All right, that's why you would get people that you could read very easily. Maybe because you're both seeing images versus words. Right. You're operating in, let's say, an AM frequency, and the other ones know they're doing verbal to you, and so that's an FM thing. So when you first start out, you realize that you've got these differences. That was what we found out first. Yep. Was how are we sending it? What was the picture? Did you see a picture? Did you see the words? You know, what's happening? So then you understood how that person is inclined to send you the information. And so you sort of like learn how to tune. Yep. Within the given radio spectrum, all right? Now, when you take it a little bit further, you go, well, what if I just learn how to open my frequency so that I could pick them all up? And that's when the only way you can get into open frequency, in my opinion, is to be able to silence your mind.
Right.
You know, and that is apparently a very difficult thing for people to do. So the first thing I have to do when I'm trying to get somebody so that they're easy with telepathy, that they're flowing with it, is to teach them how to empty their brains, how to understand what I call a null spot. Right. So what that is that in between your thoughts, you have a null spot. Every time you hesitate, there's a null spot. What you got to learn to do is to not just skip over that null spot, that blank in your head. You got to focus on it. Because once you understand that exists, then you can expand it. And once you expand it, your frequency, your tuner, is able to just kind of like go the whole spectrum and pick up what's ever there. And because you're in that null spot of not letting what Walt calls the noise, he calls it noise. You know, the constant going on of your left brain. You know, it's silence. Just be quiet. I'm doing something. And what is happening when you can shut down that left noise, and it is the left brain, okay? Now you're firmly in the right side of your head. You're in the area that is your real consciousness, your higher level consciousness, the one that I don't know if you ever saw the Dr. Jill Taylor tape that she did to Ted. It's absolutely astounding. She is a neurosurgeon who was having a stroke.
Yes, I did see that. Yes.
You know, and she was able to have a dialogue with herself regarding what was happening, because she was when she was in the right brain posture, everything was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm having a stroke. Isn't this interesting? And, you know, having no concern about it, just going through the experience, you know, feeling what it feels like. And then her left side of her brain would go, are you crazy? You're having a stroke. Call 911. You know, it's like, so if you understand that the most important thing I think I ever learned was how to be alone.
Right.
And how to, you know, be amazed at the way that the dialogue in my own head goes on. But the key to teaching people telepathy is really in that frequency opening up yourself to the frequencies. And that's why when you are really close to somebody, sometimes you can't read their minds at all. Because you can't get yourself shut down. That your own dialogue keeps happening. Why'd they just say that? You know, I mean, you get into your brain gets too noisy when you actually know the person. So if you get a stranger comes in and they sit down with you, it's a blank, you don't have anything to say anyway, so it's easy to go to the null spot and be quiet and just listen and feel.
Because you're in the openness and you're not already think you figured them out. You don't know them, so you're open to receiving. And the quiet is super important. That's why I go by myself a lot, and I'm in nature a lot. I live in a beautiful area. I just look out my window. I don't even have to go out there. And it rejuvenated me. And I think that right brain part is also part of that childlike thing that I like so much, where we're not getting that adult mind and society in. And it's another reason I don't have TV and why I'm really selective, because your subconscious holds on to every single thing it sees or hears. It doesn't know what is good or bad or right or wrong. It's in there. So I don't really want to watch a violent movie. I don't even want to hear it or the loud noises. It is very noisy here. And it's hard on your nervous system. And I think a lot of people shut down and get overwhelmed and can't cope from all that noise and the energies that are going on, you know, and everything that's happening. It's too much for their nervous system. And then it's hard to get good to know what to do, and they freeze.
Oh, I agree with you a lot there on, say, the horror films.
Ugh.
With all the screaming. I can't stand that, you know, and my kids will be watching that stuff, and I'm like, how do you stand to listen to that all the time? You know?
I think what happens is they do it to feel alive, because they're getting a charge out of it, because maybe and I'm not saying just for them, I don't know them personally or anything, but it does take a certain constitution, and in a way, to me, they're desensitized, and so it takes more and more of it to get a reaction, so they're doing it for the thrill.
Well, and I think that's what it's all aimed towards anyway, is the desensitization of other people's pain and suffering and all of that. But while I'm on, I do want to get to Majest's question to you.
Yes, I kept meaning to, and I keep forgetting. Go for it.
Okay, and it's Deb. Do you still see faces all the time? At night, anyway?
Not as much. I'm dreaming more lately than I used to. I think I go out a lot, and I get a lot of feelings. But I'll tell you what, even when I got a little older, when I would get sick and didn't feel good, I would see faces. I do not see them as much now. No, not really.
You know, it's strange that you just said that, because I used to do the same thing. If I was sick, I would know that I'm getting sick, because I'd be laying in bed at night, and I would start seeing faces, or like the ceiling would start doing these strange things.
I would get the same thing. Like, I'd be at a restaurant with my parents. I remember one in particular, and I started not feeling good, and I didn't know what was happening, and I was seeing faces in the wall. Mm-hmm. And then I knew, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling sick. And for some reason, pickles helped. But, you know, whenever I was sick, I don't know. I don't do that anymore either. But that's interesting. You had a similar thing.
Oh, yeah, because I would be, because it was like the ceiling was opening up. It was just the strangest feeling, and I must be getting sick. And then I would start seeing the faces, and I was like, whoa, because there's a dizziness sort of thing going on with that too. And I haven't had that in a long, long time. But yeah, I used to quite often, especially as a young teenager.
You know what that makes me think of?
Were you getting hot? Were you having a fever?
Well, I thought that I was. And sometimes I did end up being like a flu sort of thing the next day when I woke up. But sometimes not. So I also didn't wonder, do I have ETs coming in? What's going on here? But it hasn't happened in, I was a teenager, so long time ago. 50 years. But, yeah, it was, sometimes I'd get ill, actually, or sometimes not. And I think the last time it happened, I didn't get sick. So I don't know if my coming to terms with it somehow weirdly may have stopped my getting sick. Because if I thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting sick, then, you're telling yourself you're getting sick, so you get sick.
Right.
So I don't know. It was just a strangeness.
Well, Nancy's right about the temperature can cause things, but I also, when I was really sick quite a few years ago, extremely sick, near death sick, why I don't work anymore, I went into this magical place. And I was like, what has happened to me? And I'm like, can I be this way after I get better? And I kept getting told no, and I'm like, why? So I started reading about it a lot. And I think it was Eckhart Tolle, someone said, and it made sense to me, when you get sick or you get a little weakened, your ego weakens. Because you need all your strength for your body to fight or do whatever it needs to do to readjust. So then when you get your strength back, your personality and all those things that are dynamic about you start to come back. So I think sometimes, like when we first wake up or if we're sick, there's certain times when we can touch those realms easier, like meditation, but often when you're really sick because you just don't have the fight. All the energy's going in the body. And I don't know if that has anything to do with us seeing faces, but I know it's happened to me that way. And it did disappear after a while when I got better, and my personality is definitely back. So, but go ahead, Nancy, about the heat. What were your thoughts on that?
No, I just wondered if she was going into fever, if that was the connection there. I just wanted to clarify that probably was not.
Well, sometimes she said, and I think with me too, sometimes when I was young, I'm sure it was too. I bet. If we really got sick after we've seen the faces.
Well, I, as you're talking, I'm trying to, I had a weird situation where I started internally bleeding for no reason whatsoever and virtually bled out. They replaced as much blood as, but at the time, I was perfectly alright as far as I knew. I knew this was happening, but I wasn't in any pain. And it was, not a scary place, but when you were talking, I'm going like, yeah, but it was like, there was only part of me that went through it.
Right.
It was a shutdown thing happened.
Say that again?
I had a lot of pain too, so pain might be part of the factor too. But yeah,
well, I'm saying I felt no pain whatsoever. None.
Right.
I was in none. So I don't even know what happens when you add the pain on it. But the fact that my body was basically bleeding out, something happened.
Different. You didn't feel any different. It didn't really affect your consciousness, really.
It did.
It did.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is because I'm going back through it, and because I'm a remote viewer and I can actually go back to the exact time that it's happening.
Okay.
And what's happening is that the body is absolutely fighting for its life, but I wasn't part of the fight.
Right.
I was sort of like an observer.
Yes.
And I can remember clearly every moment from when it started until they gave me propofol or something that knocked my ass right out. But in going back there now, I'm realizing that no, I didn't judge it. I even had this and I don't think she should have done it. She was a emergency room attendant, and she pulls out one of these fancy phones. At the time, I didn't even have friends that had these phones. And she starts doing a search on the symptoms. And I don't think she should have been telling me. Everything that she read was, I'm going to die within the next 20 minutes or so.
Wow.
Or I'm going to I have a terrible cancer thing that I could, if I survive, I'm still going, it was just a terrible thing. And she's telling me this stuff and I'm like, no reaction. No, it never, I heard it. It's filed. I can still remember the details of it. But, there was no emotional response to it. There was no fear-based. It was like there was only one part of me that was looking at it. And you're right. It's probably the right side.
Yeah.
It sounds like you were out of your body.
Yeah.
Not all the way, but a lot of the way.
That was the other weird thing, is that I was really in the body. Because I go to the dentist and they go to work on my teeth. I get out of my body so I don't have to go through that. But this was weird because I was absolutely in the body. I didn't feel any kind of a separation, but except for the fact that part of me was like turned off.
You couldn't make a story about it. You were just being with it.
Yeah.
And that's actually that is actually a really good way to live. But it is a weird experience. I've been there quite a lot. Yeah, it's like your left brain can't make the story about it. It can't go into crisis, just like the lady with the stroke. We're like, oh, this is happening. You get really neutral. It's hard to describe it. Like where her other side said, oh my God, I'm having a stroke. I mean, you could have said, oh my God, I'm bleeding out. I'm going to die. And, and I'm close to that too, but I didn't get panicky. You don't have the energy to, really.
No, but that's the weird thing it probably is exactly what you said, that the body is fighting for its life. But from the way that I looked at it, and the way it sounds like you looked at it too, your consciousness was totally functional.
Yeah.
The consciousness that goes on afterwards. I mean, if I had slipped out of the body, I would have just said, well, that was the easiest death I've ever done. I was invested in it one way or the other.
Yeah, that might happen if you had kept going and you actually did start to cross over. Then you would have just carried that energy and you'd be watching it from the ceiling, like they say, and I've done that in meditation sometimes. I've been on the ceiling looking down at our group meditating, and I'm like, I wonder if they see me up here, but you didn't go out of body. There is a difference. It's really hard to explain. And I remember when it happened to me, as it started to happen, I thought I could tell I had not much life force in my body. And I thought, I may die. And I'm not scared of death, but at that point, this was, I don't know how many years ago, I remember saying clearly, realizing I didn't tell anybody else because I didn't want them to be afraid. But I had a little talk with my soul, whatever I think that is, and I said, you know what? I am going to honor and do this with grace and ease, whatever my soul chooses. But if I, little Deborah down here, get any say, I would like to stay. But I'm going to go with whatever it is. But I knew I was close to that point. And the next day, don't you know it, I heard a voice said, you have turned the corner. And I didn't even, and that's all I got, because I always get short little sentences. And I walked out and I told my friend, I just heard I turned the corner. And I could only walk like 5 steps at that point. And she's so sweet. She just goes, good. Nobody knew what it meant. And I started to slowly get better. It was a long process. But it's just you go into this really neutral zone, and your left brain or your ego, your personality doesn't have the energy to hold itself up and together.
Well, Dr. Hameroff, Stuart Hameroff, he's anesthesiologist, I believe that's his name, and he got really interested in the fact that he was continually putting people into basically a death state as far as the body goes. And he began to wonder about the conscious level that remains in that body.
Right.
He got with another well, it was a quantum physicist, and I can't think of what his name was, but he started doing some work with him, and they discovered there's the consciousness, and basically because we're running out of time here, but consciousness is filled with aha moments. Whenever you go, oh, aha, okay, that goes like to the right side of your brain, and it's like this, aha, I got it, right? And in the left brain, you have all this other stuff that you might go, oh yeah, now I understand that. But that aha thing is what seems to build the consciousness that goes on and, after life. And he said that the amount, and they even know where in the body that this consciousness is being contained energetically, which is in a tubular region of the cells. And he said that the amount of energy that it takes to maintain that consciousness is so very little.
Wow.
That when the body's fighting for itself, when the body is putting all this energy in to survive, the consciousness is just there. It doesn't have to fight for existence because it doesn't take hardly anything to keep going. And he said that, it's a long story, but he talked in terms of what this would mean for afterlife experiences, the come back from the other side thing. He said it doesn't take much. But yeah, it's fascinating, just dealing with what, we're dealing with. But I'm hoping that we can, that we've kind of imparted at least a tinge of imagination can go a long ways to opening up your own psychic abilities. Just give yourself a chance.
Yep.
And, if that's what you want to do, like I say, it can be a rather, changes a lot of things when you know more than other people around you. But as long as you know that they could know it, all they'd have to do is wake up, that you're not special from that standpoint, you're simply special because you're born.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Well, we're pretty near to the top of the hour here. We got 3 more minutes. Deb, you're going to be back with us next month, right? Yes?
Next month.
Next month. And it'll be
my hour.
It'll be here before we know it.
It will be. Yep.
Any parting thought?
Oh, just thank you, everybody, and I don't know, life is good, and there's a lot out there for us to enjoy, so, let's focus on the high life if we can. I know, maybe that's too Pollyanna, but I want everybody to have a wonderful weekend and just trust that we're all okay.
I like Pollyanna. My favorite person is my sister Mary, because she goes through life and people will call her a Pollyanna. But I know that she knows what's really happening. It's just that she won't go there in her head. And she just has a magical quality about her that by example, and I have had this, she's 4 years younger than me, but boy, she teaches me every time I interact with her, just because of the way that she looks at life. So there's a lot of people out there that are like that, and they're holding ground for us.
Yep.
Pauline, I should say this. I did say this. This is Haggy Shack Radio, producing Colleen Kelly, and it's over Wolf Spirit Radio. And please donate to those stations, and you can also get to the archives for $5 a month at Wolf Spirit. And it's not reoccurring. Every month they'll ask you if you want to continue. Deb, thank you again so very much. It was a long 4 hours, but we did good. Dolly, feel better, darling. We're going to get through this. We're just in a little rocky spot here, but it's just relax, take it easy, breathe it in, and we'll get through this into the next. It's sort of like a wave, coming and is about to crest on the beach. It's going to get interesting. It's been interesting. It's fascinating. I'm sorry those people are asleep because they're missing the best story ever told. Okay, Colleen, you want to take it over, darling?
I sure will. And I want to say again, happy birthday to Lee Brown. Hope you're having fun at that cool restaurant with the Tez, which is a honey wine, and the triple chocolate cake.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I thank you all for being here with us during Say What and also dilly-dallying in Dolly World. And coming up next is Up Crossers Creek with Emily Norcross. So I'm going to play the outro and get on to the next show.
Be safe, everybody. Thanks again, Deb. Love you, Colleen. Love you, Deb. Be safe. Just have fun, for heaven's sakes.
You've been listening to Say What on Haggy Shack Radio at haggyshack.com. Simulcast to Wolf Spirit Radio.